Do you have questions about insurance in Florida? How much is it? Can you get it? Do you need to have a flood policy? There's so many things when it comes to insurance that I get asked all the time. So today I had the pleasure of doing a little pre-record with a friend and insurance agent here locally that's going to fill us in on everything. So I really hope you enjoy this interview with Julia, and let's get started. So I want to welcome Julia to our screen, and I want to thank her for being on. I know so many people have questions about insurance, and so I thought I wanted to go directly to the source. And so Julia, thanks so much for joining us. Tell everyone a little bit about yourself before we get started.
Well, my name is Julia Dees. My husband and I own an independent insurance agency in downtown Sarasota, although we cover the entire state of Florida. We started our business almost 10 years ago at this point. Actually, this week is 10 years, which is
Congratulations.
it's pretty incredible to see how much we've grown.
I know so many people are asking me and are concerned, why is insurance expensive in Florida, and should it be that scary elephant in the room that everybody is worried about if they're relocating to this area?
So for one, I would say no, as far as something as scary in the room. What you want to do is have an expert on your side to help you navigate when it comes to having a real estate agent like you, Lisa, to help them navigate through that process to find the home that makes sense for them. You're looking at the full picture, and insurance is included in that. So no, I don't think it's something that should deter anybody from coming to Florida. You got to work with the right people to help you understand what that looks like for your budget. As far as the rates go, yes, we've seen an increase. However, we have to remember Florida is on a peninsula. We are a high risk area. And so with that is going to come some additional cost when it comes to insurance. People moving from maybe up north, Midwest area tend to have a little bit of a shock when it comes to insurance. But that's just simply because we're at a higher risk down here, which I think everybody's aware of. They just don't see it until they see the dollar amount on the paper.
So just for our viewers out there, is it double what people will see in the Midwest or up north, or is it not? Do you have any idea? Because people ask me all the time, how much is it?
Right. So that is such a difficult question. And I think if it was easy, I probably wouldn't have a job. But
Yeah.
but truly, it depends on the property. So of course, if you have a newer construction home, you're not on the water, these types of things are all going to come into play when it comes to the cost. So what it's going to look like compared to what it looks like in the state that you're coming from, again, it just depends.
Okay. I understand that because it's hard to even imagine. Every scenario is different. So we're hearing a lot about insurance companies leaving the state of Florida. Or I have people say, can I even get insurance? Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah. So what we've seen in the past couple of years, it's really kind of hit the mainstream media, I would say, in the past 6 months or so. But we've seen companies that have chosen to leave the state and not do business in the state. This insurance is cyclical, and this has happened with a lot of big name carriers that you may be familiar with out of state. This has happened, but these are some of the regional carriers that we have in Florida that have left the state. Does not mean that they're not going to come back at some point, but for the time being, they think it's too volatile for their business structure from a financial standpoint that they're pulling out. But there's still a lot of companies. And with that said, when you said that there might not be an option for insurance, that's not the case, because there's always what's called Citizens, which is our state's insurance. It's basically, backed by the state, and it was intended after Hurricane Andrew is when it really was developed to ensure that those of us in the state that is high risk when a hurricane comes, that there is a place for us to find coverage. So there's the private market, and then you have Citizens. So that'll always be an option. And along those lines, is like with anything, free enterprise, right? When one company leaves, another company sees an opportunity and comes in. So we're starting to see some newer companies pop up to take on some of that, to offload some of that from Citizens, or to offload some of that from the other companies that are leaving the state.
Oh, that's really good to know. So obviously we've just gone through a major hurricane here in Florida, and everyone is asking, is this going to start impacting our rates moving into 2023?
So it's tough to predict, much like the real estate market, I'm sure for you, Lisa, to predict exactly where it's going to go. But what I will say is, prior to this hurricane hitting, we have seen rates increasing, and a lot of it had to do with fraud. When it comes to insurance and you're making a claim for an act of God, which is what a hurricane is, you are not going to be penalized for that claim. So just because of the hurricane, I would say no. However, over the past couple of years, we've seen these rates go up and up and up. A lot of it's been through some, shady things that have happened on the back end of things from contractors. And a concern of mine, and something that we're so focused on with our clients that have had claims, is making sure everyone's educated to understand what to look for when it comes to a contractor, to make sure that we're mitigating some of these additional, potential for some fraud, to help us make sure that we're not going to continue to see that increase from that standpoint.
Okay, well, that's really good to know as well. So, another question that people ask quite often: if you file a claim, let's say, during the hurricane, you had some shingles blow off, or your cage, or, was kind of demolished, and you filed a claim. I hear people talk about, oh, then all of a sudden my insurance doubled, or my insurance company dropped me, even though that's why we have insurance. Can you speak a little bit to that?
Sure. Yeah. Like I said, for home insurance and when it comes to hurricanes, that's not supposed to be the case. I will say auto insurance, you file a claim with your auto insurance, more than likely you're going to see your rate go up. So there is that can be put on, but not when it comes to homes and with hurricane. And as far as being dropped by your carrier, that has been something that Jimmy Patronis, who's the CFO of Florida, along with Ron DeSantis right now, has basically eliminated the opportunity for insurance companies to drop you until at least 90 days. It can't cancel you until after your repairs are completely made. So, and that's going to be up to you whenever you get your repairs done. So there's some protection that I think that we've been seeing from the governmental side to help homeowners. But when it comes to these inspections, like you said, you've got your general inspection, which is what you are recommending your clients get to do their due diligence. They know what they're looking for. They're going to, make sure that the windows open up and down, properly. They're going to make sure the dishwasher is working effectively. But when it comes to the 4-point, that's going to be something that's going to be required for homes that are older than 20 years. It used to be 30. I would say more often than not, homes that are 20, companies are requiring it for homes that are older than 20 years. Okay. And that's going to be based off of eligibility. So that's not going to be something that's going to be up to your discretion whether or not you should get one. It's going to be whether or not, if your home is 20 years or older, you're going to be required to get one by the company, so they can determine if you are a risk that they want to take. Okay. So that's eligibility. Those 4 points are going to look at the roof, the electrical, the HVAC, and the plumbing. And they're going to be specific for the insurance carrier. Because I know a lot of questions that we get is when you have that general inspection, which, side note, we don't want to see as an insurance agent. It could open a can of worms. But
Great to know. Yeah.
But you're obviously in that general inspection, you're looking at those things as well. But in the 4-point, it's going to be specifically geared toward what the insurance companies are looking for. And it has to be on that separate form, has to be that separate inspection for that, for the insurance to determine the eligibility, whether or not they'd even be able to give you a quote.
Okay, so that leads into the next point. You get the 4-point and you review it, and there is something, whether it's plumbing, electrical, and you're like, oh, sorry, we aren't able to insure it. Does it then can you then call Citizens, or is a home ever not insurable?
So I would say there are going to be challenges. And unfortunately right now at the market, how it's kind of changed a bit is that you have some of that negotiating power back. And this is why I think it's so important to get insurance in at the very beginning of these transactions. Go under contract. You've got that, as you know, Lisa, you've got that window that you have the inspections and you have the clauses that you built in to the contract to allow you to do what's in your best interest. And so for us, is there a point where a home would be uninsurable? I would say there might be. However, we're going to try to find an option for you one way or the other. The challenge that we will see is it's not a one thing that's going to make the home uninsurable. It's going to be a multitude of things. And so that's where going back to the seller to say, hey, we need to have this fixed prior to closing, or getting creative with it. This is why working with an agent who can really truly guide you through that process is so important, because sometimes it takes a little creativity in figuring out what to do to put you into that box. But no, at the very beginning, we look at all options, including citizens, to show what the best option is for the client.
Okay. So let's pivot just a little bit. I'm a homeowner and I put all new windows in my home. Can I call you and say, can you lower my insurance?
That is a question we get a lot. So it depends on if that was the last thing that you had to put in that's hurricane rated. So on a wind mitigation inspection, which we can talk on that as well, but on a wind mitigation inspection, there is a credit called opening protection credit. And that's going to be essentially a yes or a no. Do you get the full credit or do you get none at all? So when we have homeowners calling us a year or two later, when they decide to put all impact rated windows in their home, and they want that credit, the question is every opening to the home protected? That's including your garage door. That's including your all of your doors that lead to the exterior. That includes the glass block, the skylight. Any entry to the home must be rated for hurricane in order for you to get that credit.
Okay, that's really good to know, because a lot of times I see people replace windows, but not like their sliders or something. And so that's important to know.
Home insurance policy, that wind protection, that hurricane protection is going to be built into it. And as far as the wind mitigation goes, is kind of testing your home, or it's looking at, the inspection is looking at how well your home would do in the event of a windstorm, how well it mitigates the risk for wind. It's going to look at what the roof is made of, how the roof is attached, and different types of structures. Like I said, that opening protection is included on that wind mitigation. But what's interesting about the wind mitigation inspection, unlike the 4-point inspection that we referred to earlier, is that the wind mitigation is not required and it is for a discount on your policy. So we always recommend it for homes that are older than 2002, because 2002 is when the new building codes got made. And so basically you're getting most of the credits on any home that is built newer than 2002. However, a time where we would recommend it for those homes newer than 2002 would be if they had a new roof put on, or if they had new windows and doors that opening protection added that the home didn't have before. These are things that we would recommend them getting a wind mitigation inspection done if their home was newer. But in generally, it's 2002 and older, we recommend a wind mitigation inspection so you can get some discounts on your insurance.
Yeah, and I always recommend a wind mitigation with like every inspection we do. Absolutely is necessary, and it's well worth like $100, $125 that they charge for it.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about water, because obviously, like you said, we are a peninsula. Flooding, flood insurance, high rains. I know that people always want to know what does it mean to have flood insurance? Do you have to be coastal? If your roof leaks, is that flooding? Talk a little bit about flood insurance and water in a home.
I think is people thinking that they might live in a no flood zone. Here's the news flash. Every single home in the state of Florida is in a flood zone. There is a low risk flood zone, which is called an X zone. And then there is higher risk flood zones. As you continue through those higher risk flood zones, of course, the insurance will probably vary. But what's changed about flood insurance, and as you mentioned, Lisa, it is a separate policy than home insurance in and of itself. So it'd be two policies. What's different about it is that they've recently come out with some changes in the last year about flood insurance. It used to be rated on the zone that you were in. However, now each individual home is rated individually, which is good because, the smaller homes aren't having to subsidize the cost for the larger homes, because we've got many neighborhoods now that are a mix of new construction and old construction, where they're not the same. And as we've seen with the last hurricane, we had a lot of clients or just people in the state that were inundated with floods, and they did not have flood insurance because they were not in those required flood zones. So it's definitely a conversation that we've been having a lot more with clients that are calling us and saying, hey, I'm not in a flood zone, but I'm definitely interested in getting flood insurance now.
I'm sure there's a lot of people doing that. So just to clarify, if you're in flood zone X, and you chose not to pay for a flood policy because it's not required by your lender, and you did get flooded, that like your flooring, drywall, all that, that's your responsibility as a homeowner if you do not have flood insurance?
Correct. And what determines flood, and I think you had asked this earlier, what determines flood is which direction the water came from. So if it's coming from the ground up, it's rising water, that's what's an indicator for flood insurance. And in order for it to trigger, it needs to be a flooding event where multiple homes within your area have flooded. So it's not just your singular home. So that's what's going to trigger a flood insurance claim, is if that water came from the ground up, and anything else coming from the ceiling down would be underneath your home insurance policy.
That is really good to clarify, because I know people are always thinking, they have flood insurance, so they're automatically covered for water, and that's not necessarily the case.
Correct. Yep. And each individual home insurance policy has different levels of water inclusion. So you want to make sure that you have a full understanding, because when that pipe happens to the best of us, busts behind that wall, and now you've got water damage that comes in, what does your policy read as? Do you have limited water? Do you have full water coverage? These are conversations and questions that you should ask your agent about.
Okay, great. Wasn't that great information? I'm so glad to have had Julia on today. If you have any questions at all, give me a call or shoot Julia a message. And as always, don't forget to subscribe, like, and leave comments. Thanks so much for watching. And until next time, take care.